us to share with us some insights about what we need to know when we're hiring staff for our businesses. Now, before we get too far into the webinar, I do need to remind everyone that these webinars are general in nature, and whatever we're going through, whenever you're going through information here, just make sure that you look at what applies and works for your own business. And these are things that we need to look for and need to look for in our business, but we do make sure that we want to make sure that we are following the processes and procedures along the way and making sure that the advice we get is relevant to our businesses. So Karen, welcome to our skills webinar. And Karen's traveling today, guys. How cool is this? She's got the work-life balance thing happening, haven't you?
Yes, I'm in Mudgee today. I'm going to go and hit some wineries this afternoon. My husband's just out somewhere.
Can't tell the person in lockdown that.
Oh, sorry. It is very cold here though. So yeah, I think it was like 1 degree or something overnight. But people in lockdown are probably suffering much worse than that. It's probably just as cold, if not colder. So I feel.
Oh yeah, it's cold here. We are in Victoria. Okay. Wow. Well, thank you very much for joining us while you are traveling. And if you are visiting the wineries, I now must ask you to drink wine for me while you are there. It's a tough job, but I think you can cope, hopefully. So for those of you who don't know Karen, Karen's been a long time business member. I think you've been there since we started back in 2014, Karen.
It's been a while. It'd be pretty close.
Be pretty close, I think so. And Karen is a HR advisor, and she helps small business owners just like you understand what it is that you need to do when working with HR for your business and knowing your employees. Now, I know myself, I never got into business to want to know how to employ people. I never got into business to want to know how to do anything other than what I love to do. So this is where bringing experts like Karen really come to the table for us to be able to share those expertise. Karen, would you like to introduce yourself and just give a bit of street cred to what we're getting before we get into today's presentation?
Yep. So you're exactly right. People get into business because they're good at something, and it's not usually HR. So that's where I come in. So I've got probably over 30 years experience in HR, in a combination of my own business for the last 9 years, advising small businesses in relation to a range of HR matters, from getting systems and documents in place to actually acting as their virtual HR manager.
Yep.
So, and a lot of experience in government departments, being a HR manager as well. I've also got payroll experience. It is from quite a while ago, but I do have the basics of payroll. So that adds to my ability to be able to interpret awards and give advice on things like pay rates and award conditions.
Fantastic. Well, that's going to really help us along the way today.
Thanks. I'm not a lawyer, but I do have lots of experience in HR, and all of the documents that I use are written by employment lawyers. So I can feel really confident that everything I'm providing is legally sound.
Fantastic. And that's really important. And once again, guys, I'm just going to give you a general disclaimer. The information you receive in these webinars is very general in nature. So make sure that you are seeking out the advice that's going to suit you and your business when you get underway, and making sure that you are doing the things that are right for you and your business, because that's what we all need to do.
Yep.
Okay, Karen, I'm going to let you take over from here. If anyone has questions along the way, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A. If you're watching the live streams, please feel free to ask them. We will see a bit of a Q&A feed, but the best place to ask them is here in the webinar, because if you need any clarification, Karen can come and answer them for you. So you can come and ask them straight away. We're going to delve into this webinar today with Karen. I'm going to let her do the presentation. I'll do a little bit of admin, moderating things in the background, and make sure that we are sharing this information with as many people as we possibly can, Karen. But welcome, and let's get started for today.
Okay, thanks. So I've got a presentation, so you're not just looking at me. And if anybody would like the information contained in the slides, please reach out and I can give you the information and the links.
Fantastic.
So hopefully this works.
Let's see, can we see your screen? Yes, we're up. Beautiful.
Perfect.
And I'm so excited to watch the branding's in place. Sorry, guys. I'm also Karen's branding coach, which also doesn't doesn't help, but I love seeing brandings in place. Yay.
As Linda said, we're going to talk about 7 things to consider when you're employing people in your business. And this can be for somebody who is just about to employ their first person, or they might be thinking about it, or this also applies very equally to somebody who may already have 10 or 15 employees in their business and they just want to check that they're doing the right thing, or they're getting to the point where they just can't do it all themselves and they need some help and support to make sure that all of these things are in place.
Fantastic. Great opportunities.
So these are the things I'm going to cover. I'm going to start off with the 7 things, and I'm just going to finish off with a little bit of information about the Fair Work Information Statement and the new Casual Employment Information Statement, a little bit about HR policies, employment contracts, pay rates and awards. So there's lots of things to consider. And yeah, like Linda said, you don't go into business to be worried about all of these things. So it's good to know that you can have somebody to talk to about these things and to make sure that you have considered everything and that you're covering your risk in relation to the compliance side of things, but also that you're covering all of what I call the good things in HR, about making sure that you've got happy employees and they're engaged and they're happy to work in your business and they're not sitting there just biding time while they're looking for a new job or something like that, because those people are probably costing you money. They're definitely not making you money.
Exactly.
So the first one is just to consider the cost of employing someone. There are a lot of things to consider. It's not just about, okay, I'm just going to get an employment contract, get the person start next week and off we go. There are lots of things to consider in relation to cost. So some of those things are, of course, what you're going to pay them. So making sure that you understand what the pay rates are and those types of things, but also all of the other things that go with employing somebody. So workers' comp insurance is something that people quite often overlook, and that's one of the things further down. So I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later. But there's also things like what equipment do they need? If you're working in an office, for instance, they'll need a workstation possibly. Do they need computer equipment? Are there other pieces of equipment that they need? If you're running a business and you're currently working from home and running your business from home, are you going to continue to do that when you employ somebody? Or do you need to go out and look for an office or maybe a shared office space, or will the person work from home? So I suppose there's a lot of those things to consider in relation to cost. Do you need to provide them with a vehicle if they're going to be on the road? Tradies, for instance, some tradies will provide vehicles to their employees. If you've got a salesperson that's on the road, you might want to consider providing them with a vehicle. Lots of real estate agents provide vehicles. So that's a cost that needs to be considered when you're looking at all of those things. And something that's completely out of my expertise, you should really talk to your accountant when you're looking at those sorts of things, because if you're looking at providing a vehicle, for instance, I have no idea about all of this stuff, but fringe benefits tax may come into play. So it's really important that you talk to your accountant about those things, so you can really consider all of those things before you make the decision. So they're probably the main things in relation to cost. Superannuation, making sure you understand how super works. So they're sometimes the things that people forget about when they're looking at what they're going to pay somebody. So it's important to make sure you understand all of the costs, because it might just change your decision in relation to what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
So the next one, deciding on whether you need a casual, a full-time, a part-time employee, or maybe you need a contractor instead. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in relation to the difference between an employee and a contractor, because you could do a whole day on that. And it really, really, really is one of those cases where you do need to get very tailored advice in relation to your particular circumstance when it comes to that.
Yes.
But one of the things quite often I'll have somebody say to me is, I'm going to employ somebody as a casual to start with, and then I'm going to put them on full-time in a couple of months. I just want to see how they go. So I figure casual is the best way to go. Now that can be, but it's not always the best way to go. So if you know that you need a full-time person because you're opening a retail store, or you know you have an actual need for a full-time person because you're so busy and you've got so much work, putting someone as a casual first just to try them out, then trying to convert them to full-time can sometimes be tricky because casuals get a 25% loading. And a lot of the time, once people start getting that casual loading, they don't really want to go to full-time and miss out on that 25% loading, even though they get different entitlements like leave and public holidays and things like that. So it's important to consider what you're looking at when you're first employing somebody. And if that's the only reason you're putting on as a casual first, that's what a probation period's for.
Absolutely.
So,
and I can tell you guys from my recruitment days, we used to have so many people say, I'm just going to put them on temp and then I'm going to see if they're going to work. And I'm like, yeah, but once they get the taste of the temp rate, they're not coming back to your permanent salary unless they're looking for that security. So
yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the time people aren't looking for the security. They like 25%. They're happy to account for that and, you know, plan for that. So it becomes a really difficult conversation when you say to that person, well, I now want you to be full time. So just consider that when you're looking at it. But absolutely, sometimes casual will be the best option. If you have seasonal work, or it's weather dependent, or you just need somebody for some busy periods, a casual could be the perfect way to employ somebody. So it really is a good idea to take some time and think about what's going to suit the business and that position before you really make that decision. So the way I like to explain it, a casual usually fills the gaps. So it could be that you have a couple of casuals on your books that you can use if somebody's sick or on holidays, or for a busy period.
Yeah, I agree.
It could just be because your business is seasonal and you really don't know from one day to the next how much work you're going to have. So possibly if you have a landscape gardening business, you may not know from one week to the next how many jobs you've got on. So having a casual makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Karen, you mentioned something about a probationary period, and I think it's something that lots of business owners, and I know we're going to go into the full-time and part-time and all that sort of stuff over the next little while, but I know that it was something that until I started working for a recruitment agency, I had no real idea what a probationary period was. Could we just cover that just in a little bit of a nutshell? I know it's a whole topic of itself, but I think it's really important for people to realize that the probationary period is a test.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a test both ways.
Yep.
So casuals don't have a probation period because they don't have any guarantee of ongoing work. But for a full-time or a part-time employee, that's what a probation period's for. It's for both parties to see how things are going, to see if it's a good fit, to see if they work well in the job, to see whether you actually need that position in the job, in your business, because sometimes you'll find after a few months and you haven't done all the research and really been clear about what you need, you might find that that's not the best fit for your business. And it's nothing to do with the person, but you don't need a full-time person, or the part-time arrangement just isn't working out the way you thought. So you can set the amount of time for a probation period. The most common periods are 3 months and 6 months.
Yep.
I like 6 months because it gives you a little bit more time to assess how that person's going in the business and how the position's going in the business. So you still have to give a person 1 week's notice if you do terminate within the probation period. That's the minimum entitlement according to the Fair Work Act. But it's a really good way to assess how it's going. So Sometimes people say, oh, I don't want a probation period. That's okay, but I think it's a good idea to have it there because it's something that you can refer back to and say, okay, remember when we told you in your employment contract there was a probation period? Well, we've decided not to continue your employment past that probation period because it hasn't worked out the way we thought, or we don't need the position in the way we thought we did, or whatever that reason might be.
That's all really good things. Is there a limit on how long a probationary period can be?
There's no real limit. Probation period isn't in the Fair Work Act. What's called the minimum employment period is referred to in the Act.
Yep. And
that's 12 months for a business with more than 15 employees. Less than 15. Yep. And it's 6 months for businesses that have more than 15 employees. And that minimum employment period just means that an employee can't claim unfair dismissal in the first 6 months for a small business with less than 15 employees, or in the first 12 months for a business with 15 or more employees.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean that you can treat someone really badly and then terminate them, because there are other ways people can claim in the commission, but that's the minimum employment period for the two different types of businesses, whether it's large or small. So because of that 6 months, that's why a lot of businesses will use 6 months, because it's that minimum employment period that's 6 months. For a small business, although the minimum employment period is 12 months, it's a long time to have as a probation period.
Yeah.
So I normally recommend 6.
Yep, I agree. And, look, and it comes down to, guys, also about being nice to the person you're hiring. So... but yeah, I was just interested because it's something I never asked before. Is there a limit to how long you can do it?
Yeah, so the answer is no, but yeah, look, I think anything longer than 6 months, people will probably wonder why you need more than 6 months. So yeah.
And look, from a recruitment experience, and I have had other people say I don't want a probationary period, the one thing I can say to you is a probationary period is very valuable to you as a business owner. Especially, and I'm going to say it, I'm going to mention the words, if you emotionally hire, if you hire out of desperation and emotion, because we've all done it. Let's be really honest, we have all done it in our time. That probationary period is very valuable because it allows you to renegotiate that emotional hire and actually see if you can make it work or you can't make it work. So I strongly suggest, I don't think having that evaluation period for both you and the person. And it's a two-way street. The other person gets to have a look at it. Sorry, I've taken everything off track, but...
That's totally okay. It's a very good point. I suppose one of the other things I get asked a little bit about probation too is at the end of the probation period, what do you do? Do you have a meeting and confirm that the person has passed their probation? Or do you just,
let it go,
continue on, worry about it? I think it's good to, if you're going to make 6 months the probation period, I think it's probably good to have a little bit of a review at maybe the 3-month mark.
Yep.
Because then you're communicating with the person. How's everything going? You're asking them how they're enjoying it. So they get to understand that the probation period is for both parties, and they can get a good idea of how they're going. So you can have a bit of an assessment at any time, but 3 months, 4 months, whatever you might think. It's usually not a good idea to terminate somebody on the day of the 6 months.
You
should know before then. So it's a good idea to review progress along the way. And in answer to the question I get asked about, what do you do? Do you sort of formalize it? It's a good idea, but it's not essential. But sometimes it's nice just to let the person know, your 6-month probation period's over now. We're really loving what you're doing. So we just want to let you know that probation period has ended, and we love having you here, and now your employment's ongoing.
And hey, any workplace likes cake. Why not bring them out a cake?
Yeah. So anything that you can do to celebrate is always going to be great for culture as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, number 3. So think about if the person needs qualification and what experience they need. So it's important to think about those things through the recruitment process, because you want to be selecting people if they need qualifications. For instance, if it's an accountant, they're obviously going to need some sort of accounting qualifications, bookkeepers, people like that need a qualification to do their job. But there are lots and lots and lots of positions that don't need qualifications, but they might need a really high level of experience. So being able to assess those things in a good structured interview will be really valuable. And one thing I think is absolutely essential, and this isn't a webinar on recruitment, but please reference check when you're recruiting people, to be able to
oh my gosh, yes.
to validate what they've told you in relation to their qualifications and their experience.
Karen, do you have a template for reference check questions?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to put Karen's webinar, Karen's profile into chat so that everyone can have a look at it from there. So website's what I'm looking for. Okay, let's get Linda more coffee. But the thing is there, guys, it's a skill, and if you don't feel like you know what to ask, then follow some templates and some questions, because reference checking is essential in my mind when hiring anyone. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that one.
Yes, and you would know that absolutely with your time in recruitment.
Oh God, yeah. The amount of times reference checking saved me from putting the wrong person into the job.
Yeah, I worked for a business and we were actually recruiting from brand new, and there was a lot of pressure to get a lot of jobs filled, and as some of the managers were being a little bit lax with the reference checking, and my colleague and I in HR said, look, you really need to do this, it's so important. And there was one person that they thought was so lovely at interview, and she just was so lovely, they couldn't get hold of her referees. So they decided not to worry about it, and they appointed her. Surprise, surprise, she didn't work out. She took the business to Fair Work, and every single Fair Work commissioner knew her by name.
Oh.
That business could have avoided that if they had have persevered and got the reference checking, because I'm sure they would have found out that she is not somebody that they wanted to employ.
Reference check, reference check, reference check.
Okay, so how will you find the new employee? So this again, as I said, it's not a recruitment webinar, but it is important to really think about these things. Lots of people are telling me that recruiting's really hard at the moment. It's hard to find people. So I think the traditional sort of things of putting an ad up on Seek or, the other job platforms sometimes isn't working. Where, some businesses saying I put an ad on Seek and I would get 20, 30, 40 applications. Now they're getting 1 or 2. So sometimes you just need to think outside of the box in relation to where you might advertise. I think social media is a great place. It's
Absolutely.
free. In a lot of cases, it's free. If you put a post on, your Facebook or your Instagram, you've already got people that know your business. They already like your business because they're following you on social media. And if it's not the particular person who sees the post, they might know somebody and they've already got an idea of what your business is. And they probably already resonate with your values and your culture. So if they are going to recommend somebody to apply, it's probably going to be a good fit. So it's just an alternative way if you're having trouble. Yeah. So I suppose just think of all the different ways that you can find new employees. Some businesses have referral programs from their existing employees. So just really think about all of the different ways you can do it. And of course, you can always go to a recruiter and I think sometimes recruiters have a bad reputation unfairly.
Yes.
So I know lots of really great recruiters that have lots of different flexible ways to find your next new employee. So if you have been avoiding using a recruiter, check a few out. I've got some partners that I work with. So yeah, a lot of them now have very flexible options. So it's not going to cost you a fortune, but it might save you a whole heap of time and money if you can get somebody who's an expert to find you your next new employee.
Yeah, and the thing to bear in mind, and I say this about recruitment all the time from my background, is the recruiter's spending all that time looking for candidates. They're looking for that, they're building their pool, they're building their opportunities, and some of them are headhunters. Some of them know who's ready to move and who to tap, which unfortunately, unless you're spending 24/7 a day doing that sort of stuff, you don't know those sorts of things. So sometimes if you're finding it hard, and the other thing, Karen, is I know there's lots of recruiters out there, there's ones I worked with that have gone out and done things. And I used to be a troubleshooter for a recruitment agency, so I can say this many times. They'll help you with the process. They'll help you with things like the reference checking. They'll help you with the stuff like emotional highs. And sometimes it is a HR advisor or someone like Karen to get you that help and that assistance for the stuff you're not good at. And let's just be honest, no one entered, I don't know, I'm not in recruitment, so I definitely didn't enter this job to reference check people on a regular basis. Although I can do it, that's not what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in a lot of things, getting somebody to help you with your HR, getting somebody to help you with your bookkeeping, recruitment, whatever that might be, it's better to do what you're good at and make money than waste a whole heap of time doing something that you probably don't enjoy and it's not your expertise. So I think in the long run, it will save you time and money.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one, what award or agreement covers your new employee and what's the correct rate of pay? So there are a few things to think about here. Sometimes you'll be in a business where there may not be an award that covers your employee. So accountants, a lot of positions in IT are just two examples of employees that aren't covered by an award. So you're usually looking at market rate when you're employing people like that. Award rates are still important, but they may not be as relevant to a more senior position or a position that doesn't get covered by an award. Yeah. But if you are looking to employ somebody and pay them award rates, then it's good to get some advice if you're not sure, because sometimes there will be a couple of awards that you might think are relevant. It's important to make sure you get the right one.
Right advice, especially in award rates and even market rates. Someone like Karen, I gather Karen, I'm assuming, I'm making an assumption here, that Karen has access to the latest salary surveys and all of those things for what market rate is, because once again, we're looking at paying the person the right investment, and this is an investment in our dollars. So we want to look at what the market rate is, as well as what the award rate is, because quite often the market rate can be well above award. Yeah. And to get your quality candidate, you're going to have to look at a little bit above award rate. But that's okay.
Absolutely. And that's not to say that paying award rates is wrong, because they're there for a reason. But yes, there will be some times where you won't be able to attract the right candidate if you're paying award rates. You will need to look at what the going rate is, what they're on at the moment, and how you can compete in the market to get somebody that is going to be a good performer. Yep. Sometimes in a business, you will have more than one award. So be aware of that as well. So say, for instance, if you're a building company and you have admin people in your business, then the tradie side would be covered most likely by the Building and Construction Award, depending on what trade you're in. And then if you've got admin people in your business, they'll be covered by the Clerk's Private Sector Award. So it's important to understand that sometimes there can be multiple awards in one business. So yeah, just be aware of that. And, you know, sometimes it can be tricky picking the right award. So get some advice if you're not sure, because if you are paying award rates, you could find that you're underpaying somebody if you do pick the wrong award.
And that is ouchy at the end.
Yes. Even things like making sure that you understand what you know, penalty rates and overtime rates apply to your award.
Yep.
And understanding that full-time working week is 38 hours, not 40. So
Yes.
if you're paying award rates to an employee and they work 40 hours a week, those last 2 hours after 38 go into overtime. And I find that there are businesses that just don't know, and they think they're doing the right thing, and all of a sudden they end up with a massive underpayment. So get some advice if you're not sure. If it's not somebody like me and you're a member of your industry association, that's a great place to start, because you know, if you're already paying for that type of membership, they have experts in those industry associations that can help you.
Beautiful. I'm just going to pop into chat, guys, any opportunity to book a discovery call with Karen, because it's a really handy opportunity for you to be able to ask some questions of her and be able to do those sorts of things. Karen, the one other thing that I think is most probably really important inside this area is, we've mentioned probationary periods and those sorts of things. And I think business owners, and it's, you know, something people can forget, you've hired someone for one job and they fit under that award, but you change the job description, or they grow with you, or you offer them a new position. Award checks are most probably something that I don't know. I would be suggesting we do on a regular basis. I'm not sure if anyone else wants to have a play into that one, but I think it's a really important thing to look at.
Yeah, it is a good idea, and I'm going to talk a little bit about employment contracts in the next couple of slides. But yeah, if a position changes a lot, there could be a change in award. There's most likely a change in responsibilities and pay rates. So it can be a good idea to update their employment contract to set out all of those changes. If you're just giving somebody a pay rise, but nothing really changes, it's not essential to reissue a contract. You certainly can if you want to.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely when there's changes being made, it is a good idea to make sure that the award that you're using still covers, and that you understand, you know, if somebody is working at a higher level now and you've been paying them, say at, I don't know, level 2 of the Clerks Award, you might suddenly find that you should be paying them at level 4 if they've now had a lot of duties added. So it's a good idea to regularly check those things. And it's also a really good idea to regularly check, if you are paying above award rates, to do a check every 6 or 12 months to make sure that the employee continues to be better off overall.
Yes.
Because again, you don't want to end up with a huge underpayment that you have to fix.
Yes.
So it's important to make sure that you're understanding what you're doing if you are paying above award, and that you're using the correct award as well, and the correct version. So it's always a good idea to make sure that you're accessing those pay rates and award conditions online on the Fair Work website. Don't print one out and have it in your office somewhere, because I had a client once who told me they were paying way above award, but they were using an award that was 6 years old, and I didn't actually realize that award rates went up every year. Luckily they weren't underpaying, because they were paying a fair bit above when they started out. But yeah, it's just good to do a review every now and then. If you're doing your own payroll, get a payroll audit done, so you can satisfy yourself that you're still doing the right thing.
Just popping into chat for those of you who need it, the awards and agreements details on Fair Work. It's not a 5-minute job, guys. Make sure that you are allowing time when you're looking at that sort of stuff.
Yeah, one of the other things too, there are some absolutely fantastic resources on the Fair Work Ombudsman website. So take advantage of them. It sometimes can be a little bit difficult to navigate, and I have a free online platform that has links to a lot of those things, plus a lot of other free resources. So happy for you to subscribe to that if you want all of that information in one place.
Yep.
But yeah, look, one thing that's really great on the Fair Work Ombudsman website is the pay calculator. But you really have to know what you're looking for, because sometimes that pay calculator can take you down the wrong path into a wrong award. So just be aware of that as well. But it is a fantastic resource.
Beautiful. Okay, rates, they're fun.
Yeah, very complicated. And again, not something you went into business to be an expert about.
Yes.
But it is important to make sure that you're covering the risk of an underpayment. You don't want to end up on the news or the front page of the paper for anyone that still reads it, or on some sort of social media story about underpaying your employees.
Nope, you don't.
So yeah, if you're not sure, get some advice, because you want to satisfy yourself you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Not all PR is good PR, guys, and that is definitely not PR we want to attract for our businesses.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one I touched on briefly at the beginning. So occupational health and safety, work health and safety. That legislation is slightly different from state to state. It is state-based legislation. So just make sure you understand what those requirements are in your state. Again, most states have really good information and resources on their websites, whether it's called Safe Work or Work Safe or whatever it might be in your state.
Yep.
Have a look and just make sure that you're complying with whatever you need to. Obviously, some industries are going to be a lot more regulated than others. And make sure you understand about workers' compensation insurance. It's not something you can decide whether you want to have or not. It is compulsory. So if you're a sole trader and you're the only person in your business, you can't actually get workers' comp. But if you're a sole trader and then you start to employ people, you need workers' compensation insurance for the people that you employ. And that's the same as if you're, any other structure. If you employ people, you need workers' comp insurance. It's compulsory.
Yep.
So it's really important to understand that and also get some advice. I'm not an expert on workers' comp. I've got a fair bit of knowledge, but I'm not an expert. So if you're not sure, it's always good just to ring the insurer and find out. So in some states, you've got a choice of a couple of different insurers. But in some states, you don't have a choice. So in New South Wales, for instance, it's iCare, which is a government organisation. So you have no choice. You have to use iCare for workers' comp insurance. But give them a call. Make sure that you're getting a quote, an accurate, correct quote for your business. Because again, sometimes if you go on and do an online quote for workers' compensation insurance, you may just click the wrong category and you might end up paying more money than you need to. So if you're not sure, give them a call. That's what they're there for. They're there to help you, and they'll be able to guide you in relation to all of the different industry and occupation codes that are in there that can be a little bit confusing, to make sure that you are getting the right level of insurance and that you understand what your obligations are. And I suppose just from the work health and safety, occupational health and safety side of things, it's so important to make sure that your employees are safe when they come to work. And that's not just physical safety, it's mental health as well. So please make sure you understand your obligations in relation to providing a safe and healthy workplace for all of your people. It's so important. And if you've got a great culture and you've got a great safety culture, people will love working with you because they can see that you value them and their safety and their welfare. So
absolutely. Culture is everything. Get the culture right.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so the boring things in relation to employing people is the paperwork side of things, but it is important. So I've got a couple of extra slides to just quickly run through about the types of paperwork that you need. Some are compulsory, some aren't, but they're good business. So employment contracts. So an employment contract is an agreement between you and your employee, and it sets out the terms and conditions of their employment. It's not a compulsory document. There's nothing in the Fair Work Act that says that you have to have an employment contract. Some awards will refer to it, but it's just good business to make sure that your employees understand what you expect and, you know, what the conditions of their employment are. So I'm in HR, of course, I'm going to say you should have an employment contract. I do believe it's very important. It can be in writing or verbal, but if it's in verbal, if it's a verbal contract, it's really hard to prove because
Yes.
unless you've got a recording of a verbal contract that you made, it's difficult to refer back to something that's a verbal contract because it's a bit hard to prove. So my recommendation is get a written employment contract so everybody's on the same page.
Yep.
It's also important to understand as an employer that a contract can't make your employees worse off than the minimum legal entitlements under the National Employment Standards. So you can't just say, I'm giving this is an extreme example, but you can't say, oh, I'm going to give somebody an employment contract. They've agreed to work for $10 an hour. I've written it in a contract, so that's okay.
Yep.
It's not okay.
Not okay.
Contract can't make somebody worse off. You also can't say, oh, I'm going to give somebody a contract and tell them that they can't have annual leave, but I'm going to pay them a little bit extra. That's not right either. If you don't want to pay people annual leave, you probably should be looking at a casual contract. But it's important to understand that there are minimum entitlements that people can't, you can't sort of bargain out of. There are some things that you can, but there are minimum entitlements that you can't. So you sort of can't say to somebody, oh, you know, I'm not going to pay you for public holidays because I pay you a little bit extra. So just be aware of those sorts of things. And that's why it's good having an employment contract that's written by an employment lawyer. And all of my contracts and HR policies, as I said in the beginning, are written by employment lawyers. So you can be really confident that everything you have in your contracts is legal.
Yeah, cool.
So many times I talk to people and, you know, I'm sure they're trying to save money because they think they can't afford it or they can't afford it. They honestly can't afford it. You know, quite often I'll talk to people and I say, oh yeah, I've written an employment contract. I just got a little bit from here and there. And it might be okay and you may never have a problem, but it's not worth taking that risk if you've put something in there that's not legal or, you know, you end up getting yourself into trouble. So it really is a good idea to make that investment and get an employment contract properly written up. Sometimes I've seen people that are using contracts that they had when they were an employee 15 years ago that still refer to work choices and, you know, things that are so outdated. I've seen people, when they've asked me to have a look at their employment contract, they talk about, you know, less than the entitlement for personal carers leave, or telling people that, you know, they can't take personal carers leave in the probation period, or all of these things that aren't correct. And again, I think sometimes business owners innocently
make the mistake
contracts because they had it once upon a time. So it's a good idea to make sure that you get one done properly so you can feel confident that you are providing the correct entitlements. So you can cover things like, you know, obvious things like location, where is your employee going to work, what their probation period is, like we spoke about earlier, what their salary or wages are, what their leave entitlements are, what the process is for termination, whether it's what the process is when somebody wants to resign, or, you know, what the circumstances are if, you know, you can be terminated as an employee. And again, obvious thing like start date, and it can also refer to policies and things like confidentiality. HR policies don't usually form part of the contract. I get asked that a lot. They're usually referred to in a contract, and they don't form part of the contract because policies can be changed and reviewed.
Yeah.
And the reason that it's a good idea to have those policies outside a contract is so you can review them, and you can make changes if you need to, and you don't have to reissue an employment contract every time you need to review a policy. So a little bit about policies. Again, they're not compulsory, but they're good business to make sure that you do set your expectations and your employees understand not just your expectations, but what their rights and responsibilities are. So I've just put a few examples of policies here, HR policies here. There are many more. And some of them you may not think apply to your business, and there'll be others that you absolutely want to include that aren't listed here. So this isn't an exhaustive list. It's a very short example of a few policies. So, you know, things like anti-discrimination and, you know, harassment and bullying, they're policies that really do give guidance in relation to things that are against the law. In relation to discrimination and bullying and harassment. So those types of things really are setting out rights and responsibilities of employees in relation to that legislation. All of the others, and leave has information about legislative entitlements as well. The rest of them really are more about what you expect in your business, and they're not based on, you know, the Fair Work Act or legislation, but they're based on what you expect in your business. So code of conduct, for instance, is about what you expect. It's about the behaviour you expect. It's about, you know, making sure people understand that, you know, you might have a certain level of expectation of the way somebody dresses. You can put that in your code of conduct.
Yeah.
Things that you would think are common sense and should be, you know, obvious. Things like not fighting in the workplace, not smoking, things that should be obvious, but sometimes you do still need to spell out. It can be in a code of conduct. Attendance and absenteeism, again, you know, people should know that they should come to work on time, but sometimes it's good to have a policy to make sure people do actually understand that, and also what your employees should do if they're going to be late or they're going to be away. So it can give guidance about what your expectations are around people informing you if they're going to be late or they're not coming in.
Yes.
And social media, it's good to have a policy about social media so people understand what they can and can't do. You know, again, obvious things like don't spend your day on social media when you're supposed to be working. But also things like what the expectations are in relation to what you can and can't post on social media in relation to the business, your clients, customers, and, you know, even suppliers, your workmates, anything to do with social media. It can give your employees a very clear understanding about what they can and can't do.
Social media policy is essential.
It really is. You know,
from a marketing point of view, it's required.
Yeah. So as I said, harassment and bullying, WHS also can talk about legislation and rights and responsibilities. Some businesses tell me that they don't want a drug and alcohol policy. That's fine, but it can set out the do's and don'ts. You know, even and quite seriously, you know, there will be things in there that say that if, you know, if you're going to a function and there's going to be alcohol there, that, you know, you need to be responsible, and if you're going to be over the limit, don't drive home.
Yes.
But there's also that obligation on the business to make sure that you're not doing that as well. So, you know, I think it's a good idea to make sure people understand, even in relation to prescription drugs, how they may affect your ability to do your job. Induction, I think, is a really good policy to have, because It welcomes your employee into the business. So it gives them guidance on what they can expect, and it gives you a bit of a guide on what you should be doing each time you're welcoming somebody into the business. Managing performance and grievance, again, just really making sure people understand what the process is if they do need to make a complaint of some type. So they can understand what the process is and also what they can expect. And also internet and computer use may not be relevant for some businesses. But, you know, I think there's an element of internet and computer use in every sort of business, even if you are, I don't know, like a tradie business that doesn't have a lot of internet use. You're not obviously in an office, but you may provide your employees with tablets or mobile phones that have internet access. So I think it's important to at least consider the types of things that you would need to cover when you're talking about those sorts of things.
Absolutely.
And I know we're running out of time.
We get there.
So look, for anybody who wants to get more information about the National Employment Standards, there is information on the Fair Work Ombudsman website where you can get information about the National Employment Standards. These are the minimum entitlements of employees in Australia. So it's important to understand what those minimum entitlements are when you're employing people. So you can look for that on the Fair Work Ombudsman website, or I can send you a link if that's easier for you.
Beautiful. And we've popped the link in a couple of times into chat today, guys. So hopefully you've got that and you're set to go along the way. Wow. Okay. If anyone, I'm just going to check all of our areas over here. If anyone has any questions for Karen, please pop them into chat now, whether it's either on the live stream or in the Zoom session over here. If you are going along the journey and need to work with Karen, we've popped our webinar into chat a couple of times from here. Karen, what I'd love for you to do while we wait for questions is just explain the service that you run called your HR support services and that you run, where you're available to support business owners through this, because it is an affordable option if you're hiring people to have that support.
It is. So I'm just going to, stop sharing now.
Stop sharing your screen. Yeah, beautiful.
Yes, so thank you. So there are lots of different ways that you can work with me or, you know, other HR providers. And I like to offer lots of different flexible options, because not everybody needs a monthly service. If you're a small business with only a couple of employees, you probably can't afford to be spending a monthly amount subscribing to a subscription. And, you know, there are some out there that lock you into very long-term contracts. I don't do that. It depends on what you need. So if you do need a monthly ongoing service because you've got 10, 15, 20 or more employees and you really do need a virtual HR manager, I can provide that service. And I am like having a HR manager in your business without the cost of a full-time HR manager or even a part-time HR manager. So that's a service probably for businesses that are a bit bigger. But if you're a small business, you know, with probably less than 10 employees and you know you don't need that ongoing support, but you still need somewhere to go, I have a few different options. You can book in for a paid 15-minute HR advice call or a 30-minute HR advice call. So you book into my calendar, you pay by credit card, and then you pick a time that suits you, and then we have that conversation. What I also do is ask you to give me a little bit of an explanation about what you need advice on, so we can get straight into what you need.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will ask for an email to go with that, and I usually do follow it up with an email, so so people will have something in writing, you know, just confirming what we spoke about. I also provide HR policies, employment contracts, and, you know, project-based work just to get you set up. So a business might just need some structure put in place. So they need some employment contracts, some HR policies, and then they don't really need anything else. But just knowing where to come and how they can contact me is all they need. I also can provide I can also provide HR systems if that's something you need as well. So lots of different flexible ways to work with me, depending on what you need. I don't want people paying for things that they're not going to get value out of. So I'd prefer to be flexible and talk to somebody about really what they need.
Beautiful. We have one question for you coming off Facebook. What are your thoughts on anti-competitive clauses that that people put into contracts to hold you for maybe 1, 2, 3, 5 years, 6 months? Can we do it? Is it something that's enforceable? Does Fair Work allow for it? Because, God, it's been a long time since I've seen one of those.
Yeah, they can be a really good idea, and yes, they can be enforceable, but they have to be reasonable. So, a lot of time I'll hear people say there's no point putting that in a contract because you can't enforce it. That's not particularly true, but it will depend on the circumstances. So I'll give you a couple of examples. If you put a non-compete clause in the contract of somebody who is providing basic admin services, it's pretty unreasonable to put a clause in there telling them that they can't work for any similar business for the next 12 months within the state.
Yeah.
That's pretty unreasonable, and it'd be pretty hard to enforce. But they're quite common in real estate, for instance. And I had a client quite a few years ago now who did have that clause in their contract, and their property manager resigned and started working at a real estate agent across the road. Took all of the details of their rent roll with her.
Oh.
And they were able to enforce that clause. Yep. So because it's protecting your business. So I suppose the thing is, if it's reasonable, and it's reasonable to protect your business, to protect somebody going and setting up in competition with you next door, across the road, down the street, it's very likely that you will be able to enforce those clauses. And I'm not a lawyer, but if you do need to enforce those, it's a great idea to go and speak to a lawyer about being able to enforce those clauses.
And just make sure, once again, get advice and make sure that they are written in those areas. I mean, my industry was one that was very much a big one for non-compete clauses.
Yeah, but it's probably not reasonable to tell a plumber that he can't go and work for another plumbing company within a particular area if those conditions aren't reasonable. So it'll come down to the circumstances, but yeah, they can definitely be enforced. So, if somebody says, oh, they're a waste of time, they're not particularly a waste of time. You just have to make sure that they're reasonable and the time periods are reasonable. So that's why sometimes you'll see it'll say 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And, I'm not even going to go into the legal way that's interpreted because I'm not a lawyer. But yeah, they definitely can be enforced.
Beautiful. Okay, fantastic. Well, Karen, thank you for joining us today. We are at the end of our questions. We're at the end of the session, so I appreciate your time. For those of you who are looking at getting some HR support and have enjoyed your time with Karen, as I said, I've popped the link in a couple of times for you to be able to book a call, or just head to myhrpartner.com.au to be able to book a discovery call and a chance to have a quick chat with Karen about what she can do to help you with your HR business along the way. Okay, we have got a few skills webinars coming up. Our next skills webinar is with Melissa Kwan on the 29th of June. And Melissa is the founder of eWebinar. And she is going to help you come in and join and have a chat with me about developing your webinar, developing systems to put your business on autopilot as well. So that's our new skills webinar. On June 8th, we actually have a working day online, which is how to write a media release with me. So that working day online, I'm just about to put into the chat, is all about the structure of a press release and how you put it together and what the media are actually looking for in a story. There's limited space in those working days online, but as I said, that's next week, June 8th. It'll be fun, where we're going to go through, and I think Karen can vouch for it because you've attended this one before, where we go through the ideas, the structures, the frameworks, and all of those things to put a press release in for your business. So if you've been thinking about joining us for a working day or joining me for a working day online, feel free. If we go into lockdown, continued lockdown, Victoria, it might be a great way to come and spend a day with me away from the kids and away from homeschooling, and really look at the press angles and the press opportunities that are there for you and your business. Once again, thank you for your time, giving up your time to come and join us. Karen, thank you again for joining us today. Head to marhrpartner.com.au to work with Karen. Otherwise, we'll see you back here June 29 for our next skills webinar. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.